I wish I had 3 hours for that talk, because just getting to the ethical side of things would last a long time. Our next speaker, Ricardo Rosso. Hope I pronounced it right. And
That's perfect. Yeah.
Let me just also say, most of our speakers, forgive me, because I look at some of your surnames and I go, I have no idea how to do it. I can't even chat GPT it. But in any case, Ricardo is Director at Enterprise Commercial Africa at Microsoft. We look forward to your talk. Please welcome him with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Am I on this one? Is this one live? Yeah. Morning, everyone. So I don't know what happened to my slides. I'm sure they'll come up. Cool, they got them. So I get to talk about OpenAI and what it needs from a... Can anyone hear me now? Let me do this. Okay, it might be... there we go. Thank you. And maybe my talk today is really to try and turn us into how do we use this for business? Because I think that was the challenge they gave me. He said, look, we've got all these great use cases around, and I think some excellent ones. I mean, I never thought about gender-based violence as a way to ingest data and look it up, but I think there's a lot more of these things that we don't get to do. So I'm going to really approach this from a different angle. It's really going around how do we do this from a business perspective, and where do I see the use cases? So working with a big company like Microsoft, we obviously get to see a lot of the use cases that we're building out. And I'd like to take you through some examples that I've seen. These are not all kind of real examples, but some of them are just examples. I thought I'd give you a canvas of what they look like, rather than trying to, because I want to rather leave you with something you can go and build, rather than me telling you what the answer is, because there's no answer to this. And it's growing exponentially every single day. And that's, I think, the big challenge of what we have to try and achieve today. So we move to the next slide, maybe, and I'll take you through the 4 sections that I'm going to cover off today. Oh, is there a clicker there? Do I need to learn how to use this thing? There we go. Okay, so I picked 4 areas. I mean, there's not generally 5, but I picked the 4 main ones. So the first one's around how is OpenAI going to change sales? Then I looked at productivity. Then I looked at kind of software development and then innovation. And I broke it up into the 4 areas. The reason being is that just to kind of structure your thinking around how to think about this. And you have to think it in 3 layers across all of these. So the first one is, what could you do which would just happen naturally? And Microsoft brought out what we call Copilot, and I suspect there are many of these kind of tool sets where you could just bring it into everyday life. So it could be in your Teams, or it could be in your Word. I mean, in fact, I did a piece of research, which I used Generative AI obviously to do for me, around, it was a particular strategy piece that we were doing for our African business, and I finished the document, and it was like 25 pages. And someone's, don't you want to put into a PowerPoint? I'm like, really? No, I must take this thing. So I phoned one of the guys that had the Copilot for PowerPoint, and I said, why don't you put this into PowerPoint? He gave it to me like an hour later. Here's the whole deck. It summarizes the key issues, colors, everything done in PowerPoint. I was like, thank God. It's like, what would I have done without that? Yeah. But then I reminded myself, in fact, I was telling my wife, this used to exist in the old Word. I don't know if you remember in Word before. You used to think, save it as a PowerPoint. It used to exist, and it disappeared. Now it's back again, but now it's like on steroids. Anyway, so I'll talk to you around. So the one layer is... we went dark. Yeah, Eskom joined us for a minute. And then the next one's around productivity, and obviously where it fits into the tool. So the first layer is build it into your day-to-day. The next layer would be a data view. How do you accelerate it through data? Using kind of OpenAI or Gen AI to actually ingest data, and I'll give you examples when I go through. And the last one is ingest both data and process. So that's the level of maturity. The one is just do it straight out, interface, make it easy for people every day. The second one is build it out into a data layer in terms of understanding the layer and the complexity of the layer. And the third layer is the complex one, where you're taking both data and process and you're accelerating. Let me go through practical examples rather. So what I did is I thought, let me give you examples. So personalized product recommendation. Imagine you walk into a retailer, you pick out a shirt, it automatically starts to suggest, actually with that shirt, given your eye color, given your hairstyle, given your skin tone, here are the best trousers, accessories, and everything to do. That can be done. It does. In fact, I'll tell you the example. I was driving with my oldest son. He wanted to redo his room, and he says, Dad, I want to redo my room. So I said, fine, let's go shopping. We climb in the car, goes to the chatbot, says, I want my room to have grey palettes with some dark colors, and give me what I need to buy. Told him what color the linen should be, told him what color the cushions should be, told him what for the couch in his room what it should be, the curtains, everything done. By the time we got there, he had a shopping list. So this personalized, and this is a 14-year-old kid. Literally asked this thing to match the color tones and palettes across his room so it matches. So this personalization, I picked a clothes example. So this can be done. Real time, it's already been done. Now, also demand forecasting optimization. If you're sitting in the business side, and I just did this for a retailer recently, the CEO goes across all the DCs, what they call distribution centers, and he normally gets a 100-page document. I said to him, why? He says, Rick, this is a pain. Look, I have to read this thing, and then I go into each DC, and they've got like 30 DCs. So it's like, he's thousands of pages. I said, no, give it to us. We'll put it into a Gen AI engine. We summarized it for him and told him where the stock outages are coming from, which area are the highest theft rates, which staff members are most likely to not fulfill their quota in terms of their order pick. Gave him all of that analysis out of the report. So you didn't have to go and read the whole report. So you start to get this demand forecasting of what would happen in terms of fulfillment. In his case, the DC not fulfilling orders that we placed, and even stock outage areas in the DC that were going out of stock. So you can see the sophistication you can now draw from this complexity of data. And then obviously, so when you start thinking about healthcare, and think if you're a sportsman these days, and it's probably taboo, but if you wanted to optimize your performance, and I'm a very active sportsman, cycle, swim, run, whatever's available, and I'll take, depending on where I am. Imagine I could say to them, I want to optimize my endurance for a long distance run. Give me the exact tailored nutritional program. It'll give it to me. You can tailor that exact nutrition in terms of supplements. So you can start to see the sophistication you start to get. Imagine you do that for someone that's ill. And saying, all right, you've got cancer. We know that you can go through your chemo, but you know that L-glutamine has 1,000 times healing rate than anything else in the world. Add that in. So you can start to see these things that can actually connections which you not see normally. Because if you're a sportsman, you know about L-glutamine because it's how we recover if I do a 3-day extreme cycle race, you take L-glutamine because it recovers your muscles immediately. But it's also been proved to recover cancer and AIDS patients. So it starts to cross-link these things that you couldn't do naturally. Anyway, so that's and obviously your virtual source assistant. You saw my son Enrique was already on that one. And then your customized product design. So I think these are the kind of ideas I want to leave in your mind. It starts to, and think of it like a Rubik's Cube. I think of Gen AI like a Rubik's Cube. I turn the cube, I'm solving for the room, my son's room. Okay, the curtains, the linen, the thing. Think of it beyond that. So we did this with a retailer. Conscious of my time, I better move my ass. We did for a retailer where I said, I have to plan meals in our house because I've got 4 kids. Everyone's got a dietary preference that's slightly different. My second oldest son wants to be a bodybuilder, I think. My daughter wants to be an athlete, and the other one wants to be 6 years old and wants to play with Barbie, but that's a different issue. We have to plan these meals out manually in November. So with the same retailer, I asked them, why couldn't I just tell them the age of the children, the dietary preferences based on their parents' choice, not the kids' choice, and what it is. And it built out the entire meal plan, recipes for the lady who cooks, you've got a cooking lady, and then actually even put into a shopping basket, and now from next month we'll be able to deliver it to my home. So that's the kind of level of sophistication you can now get around sales. So just think about it. Then in terms of productivity, obviously now you start to, and I gave you the example of the warehouse, you start to understand exactly where you could lean in, i.e. all the analysis of a customer. Customer walks into your store, the store is really just think of it as I think it's like a stage where your customer comes to experience your products and have a journey. How do you make the journey better? How do you coach them to saying, we know who you are, we understand your needs. You typically come into our stores when you're looking for a jacket or a coat or something, and we've actually picked out specific store locations based on coordinates for you where you can find the exact matching outfit. So it accelerates the ability to do it, but at the same time, it accelerates the staff member's ability to help that customer because it's giving the customer the insights so you're vectoring the two together, which before would be 2 different instances. The store assistant would come to you and say, can I help you? But frankly, it's like mismatched to what you want. And obviously, inventory management optimization, again, my retail example, what should be out, where are the outages, how do we fix that? And then it gets even more sophisticated in terms of, imagine if, and I actually have used this, I had a little mole that appeared on my leg. I didn't know what to do with it. I went on, you download the app, I think it was $236. It scans it. It looks at, I think it's 100 million other records. It tells you whether that's a malignant or not, or whatever, based on that. Your doctor could not tell that. Because your doctor doesn't have the ability to process 100 million other previous, which have been classified and tested with medical proof that is the case.
So that's how sophisticated these tools are getting. So think about in terms of the productivity for the doctor. Scans are done. Now, that was just for mole. Could be anything. In fact, my daughter was sick. I did the same thing. Because I think passed the doctor's exam, so I thought of it. The next one is obviously encoding, and this is a big area. Because now you've accelerated all of the ability to engage the customer, all the productivity issues, all the innovation issues. I'll talk later. I should actually swap the slides around. But now you have to develop faster. So two things have emerged. Obviously, GitHub, everyone knows, and now there's GitHub with Copilot. So I always say in the past when I used to write COBOL, so I come out of a COBOL environment, pulled the counternet to learn COBOL. And in the past, you'd have to write all the code and then write the comments. Now you write the comments, it gives you the code. It's like it's so much easier. And so you literally tell it, I want to write the code to calculate the interest income for a insurer on a home loan book. Give me what that code should be. Pushes in. In the past, you'd have to go and write the codes with the NPV calculations, the timings. Don't have to do that. So that's what it's become. So that code generation. The other thing that's emerged is with this Copilot assistance over, for example, Mesh. So as you understand, currently every system traps your data. That's a normal, unfortunate, in a business. So you put in an ERP system, data is stuck there. Then you put in your sales system, stuck there. Then you put in your manufacturing system, stuck there. So what they've now built is the ability to use OpenAI to give context to all the data. So across all of these data sets, these are the common connectors that exists, which the human couldn't do. Because it can't process that dimensionality and look at all the data sets. It literally lifts it all up, creates a data mesh over it, which is basically a view of all your data, which now means you can have multi-dimensional data access across your entire production. So what's happening on the manufacturing side, to the sales offtake, to what's coming from finance, and you can connect the dots. So that's the power of these things in terms of the data acceleration piece. And obviously the data becomes quite smart. So I was talking to one of our clients on Monday at their strategy session, and the one thing that, for example, now with the new Excel and actually Power BI, whatever it is, you say, here's the data sets. Tell me what I don't know about the data sets. It'll tell you. Oh, you didn't pick up that your staff attrition has been caused by, in your age group, in 25 to 30. Or it's been caused by, in the seasonality of this. It'll tell you those things. Which before you'd have to actually ask it the questions. It'll tell you that. So it's fundamentally changed us as humans how we think about data. And then obviously contextual data analysis, and then security, big issue. We're seeing significant increase in cybersecurity threats across the world, largely because people are now using OpenAI to define their way of attacking. They're getting smarter. They're saying, you can defend me here, but how do I go and actually push it off to the next one? So that's what's happening. So they're pushing us security to become. And my last slide really is around innovation. So this is really... So your product concept. So these could be things like, okay, here's a wardrobe that I'm trying to, let's go back to my wardrobe. This individual's dressing for a wardrobe, but they're in an indie style kind of dress code, or they're goth. Give them new products that they wouldn't have thought of that will make them unique as a goth. So you can start to innovate within the context of the human that you want to fulfill. So you start to really become personal, which is very hard to do currently because you can't ingest. What is a goth's kind of mindset? What do they dress like? They like the dark blacks. They like thematics. They like certain standout characteristics. What does that look like? If you've got young kids, goth is normal. So where it really gets powerful is in the medical research. So one of our clients we're working with is they are now taking the genomes and they're trying to match, and they're doing it with OpenAI, the link between your genome, your own and medicine types, and which specific genetic profile of you is better medicated for in what construct. So they're starting to tailor medicine to you as an individual based on everything genetically about you. Imagine that, because the moment you go into a chemist, it just goes. In fact, when my daughter was sick, I was telling you, I went on. I gave it all the symptoms. I said, this is the symptoms: tight chest, wheezing, walla walla, went through the whole thing. Or what I did first was, what are the questions that a good doctor would ask? Gave me all the questions to ask. Then I went and asked her all the questions. Then I fed the questions back. He told me this is what the medication. It doesn't give you medication, but I said, if you were a doctor and you're thinking of medicating, what would you have thought of? It gave me the answer. Right? Because it can't give you the advice, but it can give you the advice if you know to ask the question. So it gave me the answer. It says you need augmentum and you this, because you've got a high level infection. I was like, okay. Then I phoned the doctor and say, okay, let's test out. Same answer. Yeah. An autonomous vehicle. So my baby brother actually works for the largest autonomous vehicle company in the world. They code. He's got 400 AI people who work for him. That's all they do, autonomous vehicles. Think about the complexity. You're driving on the road. How does it identify it's a human that's running across the road? How does it know it's a child? How does it know if a ball's coming, there's a child likely following it? So they code all of that intelligence. And they're starting to predict forward so the car can know a ball's crossing the road, likely kid attached to the ball. You know what I mean? Slow down the car. You know what I mean? So it's building all of this logic into, so it's starting to be predictive in its thing. Now with generative AI, it starts to self-build that logic. So it knows, oh, it's a ball. But it could be anything. It could be a ball, could be a rolling toy, could be, and it starts to predict anything that moves at a certain rate, depending on its velocity and time. So you see how quickly it is. And also the virtual try-on experiences. So going back to my original example is I walk in, I want to go online, and in fact I built this app, I'm trying to think how many years ago, where it was actually for one of the big retailers. And what I said is, why do we buy clothes, and then most of us use if you're a male, at least your suit you use for a couple of years, but you buy a shirt, you probably use it 3 to 6 months, and then you're done with it, because it's kind of like, why can't I give that back into a process where it will have a different price point in the market and create a secondary market, which now I see globally is, and that could create a real impact for us around virtual try-on. So it could actually suggest clothing, but in a social and sustainable outcome. So it's not remanufactured clothes, but clothes that are available, which have been cleaned, tailored, hygienically available, and you'd buy it because you don't really care. You just want functional gear for the next cycle of your life. And the last one is really I'll talk to is energy efficient manufacturing. So that's really around, if you start to think about optimizing energy. Currently, the way it's done is you take the inbound, the demand curve, and you'd fix it out. Now you can actually optimize to say, look at the seasonality around sun cycles, look at the production cycles, look at the peaks and troughs, and manage my energy efficiency to give me the lowest carbon impact. So it can also be done for good. So I've covered a lot of concepts today, but I thought I'd just give you a taste of the kind of use cases that I'm already seeing today and we are building out. And obviously, the drug trial I've talked to. So that's me, and I was given a limited amount of time, so I had to go quickly. Big thank you from my side. Any questions, any suggestions, insults, comments, please throw them at me. Yeah. We've got 4 minutes. Shall I take it for questions? I have a question on that side. Thank you.
So the problem with these large language models is that they hallucinate, right?
Yeah, so do I.
Yes, agreed. Is it on? Yes. So one of the things that we're using it for summarization, we're using it for, you're now saying drug recommendation. And the fact is they're not knowledge bases. All they do is predict the next word. And so how are Microsoft going about verifying correctness and providing guarantees of what information is actually coming out? Because we've had many use cases where we've used it on topics that it doesn't know about it, and it just makes stuff up.
Yeah, it would. So actually, in the public version that you get, there's no temperature gauge. Okay, so that's the problem. In the one that we sell, which is and I didn't want to go into a marketing spiel, but now you've pushed me to the corner, is that we have the Azure version, okay, which is in your cloud. It's got a temperature gauge. So the temperature gauge determines the level of accuracy. So if you set the temperature, what is currently set in the norm, the public one, is 0.5. If it's at 1, it's hallucinating at full speed, and it's one of those hallucinations. If you move it to the left, to 0, it will only predict on the actual data that exists and the factual. So you have to adjust the temperature gauge. That you cannot do in the public one. So that's the reason why you're getting the hallucinated one, because it's kind of 50% hallucinating, 50% real. In the structural one used for business has a temperature gauge. Because if you're doing marketing, you want to be fluffy. But if you're doing a legal opinion based on your historical context, it must be 0. So you have to look at that, or medical. So that's the way it is solved for in the tool. Any other questions, insults? Yeah.
I think we can take one more, just at the timer's
Maybe I'm hallucinating on the timer. Any other questions? There was a question at the back.
Yeah. So thank you. So there's different generative AI. Let's say the example there of the image identification with the possible cancerous growth. Yeah. That's not generative AI, right?
No, it's not.
So
it's just
there's a broad swath of different types of AIs, and generative AI specifically has got its own incredible things, but it can't do anything that a human being can't do. possibly just at a greater scale. So if there's anything that we're unsure of, then generative AI is going to be unsure of as well. So when you're asking it to do medical plans, it doesn't know that it's not exact. So it's going to come up. So I think that there's older paradigms of AI, which is machine learning and neural networks, and then generative AI, which works differently and has, so to treat them differently within an organization, I think is important because they come with their own pitfalls and amazing stuff, but their own, I would never ever give the data of growth to a chat GPT. It would say, I'm just going to tell you exactly what this is right now. But I wouldn't trust that way. I would possibly for the more machine learning models as well.
So you're 100% right, and I can't flaw your logic. The difference is you can apply layers of context that you couldn't apply to the normal AI algorithms. So in the normal algorithms, you're only applying content and kind of context to the degree you can. The level of conceptual clarity you can provide will determine the depth at which that generative AI move forward. Now, we can go into a whole debate about this, but the way the tools work is they are contextually richer through generative AI as opposed to content richer, which they are in the ML. ML is the sequence of larger sequence in terms of a content play. The generative AI is you can add more layers of context to accelerate the degrees of dimensionality it provides you, and therefore you're thinking. So you just change your dimension of thinking. Anyway, I'm out of time. You're just going to throw me off here or punch me out of here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Cheers.
Thank you. That was really great. And it's a pity we haven't had more time. I think we are in a world now where we are moving from search to answers. And you used an example there where if you look at all the data in your business, you typically ask for insights. But generative AI should give you insights you did not ask for. You didn't even think of asking